Hey everyone, it's Jen from the Mystic Living School. I'm going live today to honor our alumni practitioner, Yvette Loredo. And as soon as she gets on, I'll be asking her questions about her journey into her healing and she being a clinician and all that good stuff. The purpose of these lives is to give you an idea of what it's like to accept your healing abilities, giving you a perspective on women of color and allies for those who take on the responsibility and the leadership of becoming a healer. So my goal is to always demystify and decolonize how we function in this world as healers, and I hope to represent our community. Hey, I hope to represent our community in these interviews, so I hope that you will enjoy. Again, I'm just waiting for Yvette to join me live. And if you have any questions about becoming a healing practitioner, or you are curious about working with your intuition, maybe you already have a practice, Yvette's going to share with us that, she is also a clinical social worker, and how does she bridge from using her clinical skills into more of her intuitive, innate gifts. So we'll be talking to her about that. But if you're curious and you want to learn how to develop your intuitive skills, hey, Yvette. So I'm going to have you join us. But anyways, if you want to learn how to develop your skills as a healer, or you're wanting to develop more of your intuitive healing abilities, I have a certification. Sorry about that. I have a certification program that starts September 21st. There's the link in my bio. You can learn all about my curriculum and get started. Join our community. All right. Yvette. Yay. All right.
Hi,
Hi,
friend.
Yvette. Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. Excited to be here.
Oh, I'm excited that you are here. I'm so grateful and so honored that you said yes to allowing me to talk to you about your journey as a clinician, a fellow clinical social worker, and your journey into your healing abilities. So before we go into those details, if you can tell us a little bit about who you are, how you help people, and just anything else that you would like for us to know.
Sure. So, the simplest of it is I'm just a girl from the San Fernando Valley. I'm Chicana. I love animals. I love to dance. And I see myself as a spiritual being and a human being first and foremost, and someone who has worked hard to heal, to be able to create space for others to do the same. Um, so I've been practicing mental health as a practitioner for about 10 years now. But my journey with spirituality, developing my spiritual gifts, and just having a curiosity towards learning all things spiritual really started when I was very young. I think I picked up my first um, book on spirituality when I was 12. So it's been a long time in development, combining the aspects of spirit and science. So the clinical aspect of myself with the energy medicine practitioner, and really being able to merge them with grace and with compassion, with understanding, because I think they complement each other very well.
Mhm.
So kind of that's the perspective that I'm kind of coming from as a practitioner.
Yeah, yeah. I know for a lot of us who start this journey and to have that curiosity, even as children, we just have this innate knowing. And, we go into higher education, we get traditional trainings and such. How did you, or was there I should say, was there any barriers or concern of going the route of your spiritual journey and your intuitive gifts?
100% yes.
Yeah.
Even though I was very curious about spirituality and considered myself a very spiritual person, there were so many doubts, there was so much conditioning, there was so much beliefs around who am I to offer this space for others? Who am
Mm-hmm.
I to do that? I'm not, I'm just, again, a human being, right? Like, who am I to provide this space for healing? So it was a long process of first starting with myself, of first starting with my own journey of looking at where those beliefs came from and replacing them with love
Mm,
and really being able to come to a place where I could, I love this phrase, break my heart open. Because we go through so many situations in life, traumas that we call heartbreaks. But how do we break it open so that we can begin to receive
mm,
and we can begin to trust? So it was quite a long journey for me in first starting with that curiosity, learning, being so aligned with these concepts that I was being exposed to through the books that I was reading. I believe that those books were portals. They took me
mm,
to places of understanding that I didn't have prior to, but they felt very aligned with my heart. And I started to go to a spiritual center called Agape International Spiritual Center in my late teens
mm-hmm,
and was
mm-hmm,
exposed to so many different concepts, to visioning, to I had already been meditating, but I started taking courses. And the very first time that I experienced Reiki as a recipient was at Agape International Spiritual Center. I must have been 17 or 18 years old. And I remember being so open to the process, not really knowing what was going on during the session. I just kind of went with it.
mm-hmm,
And afterwards, the practitioner gave me some guidance. And it wasn't until I got to my car that I had a very intense release with just sobbing, sobbing, sobbing tears. So I was having this breakthrough. I was having a purge, what I would call now a purging of energy, a release of energy. But that was the first time that I ever received it. So
mm-hmm,
it took, I would say, the majority of my 20s and going through my growing pains, and then first choosing the route of science, right? Understanding psychology, understanding um, clinical concepts, and feeling like I had to have these licenses first and foremost to be able to call myself any kind of healing practitioner. I
mm-hmm,
was always very academically inclined. I did very well in school, so that's what felt most comfortable for me once I was ready to embrace holding space for others when I had done enough work on myself. And there's
mm-hmm,
never enough. There's
mm-hmm.
always more layers. And I
Yeah.
know that, and that's something that I can share in regards to your program, that it
Mm-hmm.
has taken me to deeper layers of my own healing and how beautiful of a container you created for me
Oh.
to just go through that process, the ways in which my heart was breaking open even more, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so once I received my MSW in 2015, I had already dabbled in a couple of different healing practices. My very first was pranic healing.
Mm-hmm.
And gosh, that was over 10 years ago. It was before I got my MSW. And I was just kind of dabbling in different things that I enjoyed. Since then, I've gotten certifications in Reiki. I've taken courses in animal communication. The love that I have for animals, I think, is one of the most unconditional feelings I have ever felt. And it's one of the first mechanisms of healings that I even considered, is that I wanted to provide healing services to pets. And there was this unspoken
Mm-hmm.
connection that I had always felt with them. And one of the reasons why I felt so drawn to them is because I'm an empath. I feel deeply. I don't necessarily need to use words in order to be able to connect. And I felt that connection just very authentically, and it was very simple for me to connect that way with animals without the need for words. Um, and then I grew in my certifications. I've gotten additional ones now in breath work, sound healing through your program.
Mhm.
Um, so it's just continues to grow in terms of the different modalities that I can offer as a practitioner. And in my journey of taking the courses, you heal different parts of yourself and become more comfortable and more confident in your ability to provide that space for others. So
Mhm.
it's been, I would say, about 10 years of getting those certifications and, learning different modalities and seeing what resonates most with me
Mhm.
when I'm with my client, and being able to pick from different modalities that are most fitting for that situation.
Yeah. So there's so many questions that I have to ask in everything that you just said. So one that comes up is when you were going through this period of your healing and utilizing different modalities, did you have support around that? Did you have resistance, from family, friends, colleagues? Were you shamed by it? Did you have any guilt, or was it very free for you?
The biggest barrier was me. It was me and
Mm-hmm.
the beliefs that I had about whether or not I was capable and worthy of being a practitioner. So it's your biggest barrier, and I think for the majority of us, our own thoughts, our own limiting thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't necessarily share openly, but with my family, but they knew I was interested in this, and nobody stopped me. Nobody said don't do that. I already had my license, and they knew that this was a curiosity of mine, but I don't necessarily think that they expected me to become a practitioner. And really, this is the road and the path that I'm going towards now, is really doing this full time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and they've been supportive more recently, now that I'm taking it more seriously, right? So I think the more
Mm-hmm.
confident that we are in our own ability to move in this direction, people don't question you as much. So I feel like I identified more with my identity as a clinician for a long time, and now
Mm-hmm.
I'm comfortable with that merging of the two, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, there was a couple
Can you
more
share a little bit more
components.
about that? So, for those who are on this journey, who are in the beginning stages of maybe they're a clinician or maybe they're in some other service-based profession, and either they're becoming more curious about their innate abilities, their healing abilities, or they want to see how it works. How have you bridged them together, or how have you brought them to become interconnected or
So
holistically even?
yeah, I think the the training that we get as clinicians is geared towards diagnosing, towards using evidence-based practices, and all of those things are good. They're incredibly useful, and they make for a really strong foundation as a clinician. One of the areas that I think we are not necessarily discouraged, but it's not as, I guess, common to explore or to provide guidance in the area, is a person's spiritual practice, right? So even though we may explore what that spiritual practice is, what their background is in terms of religiosity and things like that, um, it's not the first modality or technique or intervention that you would necessarily provide within a clinical setting. In my development of my own practices, the practices that I bring into the clinical setting, which are things like mindfulness, somatic, being very aware of our somatic experience. And that's
Mm,
not something that I remember really discussing in our program. We're taught CBT, we're taught cognitions, emotions, and behavior actions, but not necessarily the somatic experience that we're having.
mm,
during these different experiences that we're having. Even myself, I felt disconnected from, not really able to identify the somatic experience. What is my internal somatic experience in relation to my trigger? So as I've
Mm-hmm.
expanded my training uh, into different modalities like EMDR, for example, the somatic, understanding your somatic experience, using things like resourcing, your imaginal resourcing. This is the most beautiful way that I have seen to combine the two, because when you're doing imaginal resourcing, you're literally going into a visioning process. You're identifying um, uh, your protectors, you're identifying your safe place, you're identifying um, uh, your sort of like an archetypal best version of yourself. So you're using, I would almost call it our third eye, our
Mm-hmm.
visioning, our ability to look at these things that are non-physical and utilize them as resources. And of course, you provide all of the psychoeducation, you provide trauma psychoeducation, you do the CBT, you go into, exploration and understanding of their history. And then once you have that really strong foundation, as far as the clinical components, you go into the resourcing, and you can go into the EMDR process, which is literally a visioning process where the research around it shows how effective it is, but they still don't understand how it works, because
Mm-hmm.
the area of research around consciousness is still lacking, because it's
Mm-hmm.
we don't have the scientific technology to be able to take um, measurements of consciousness. But as spiritual practitioners, we understand, consciousness is just something we kind of we're in all the time. We understand how intricately connected it's the source of our experience, and that the
Mm-hmm.
physical is really the secondary component.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to use these modalities within the clinical setting, we're bringing in those tools that really are spiritual tools, but we're
Mm-hmm.
not. We're in the evolution in the clinical setting where we can begin to bring those into our practice. And even things like Reiki, for example,
Mm-hmm.
some companies that I was looking into as collaborating with them for advertisement, I could advertise myself as a Reiki practitioner. So it's
Mm-hmm.
becoming a lot more commonplace
Mm-hmm.
to have these additional alternative healing modalities as part of our tool box, right, our toolkit as
Mm-hmm.
practitioners. And I also am able to provide or list my offerings and make the distinction when we're doing clinical therapy, and then offering my energy medicine practitioner services as a supplement to it. So
Mm-hmm.
if we need to stay within the realm of clinical therapy, psychotherapy for insurance billing purposes, okay, let's go ahead and do that. We'll use all those skill sets, and then we can do the energy medicine as a out of pocket
Mm-hmm.
um, supplemental um, form of support. But they just complement each other. Really well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, exactly. So, one of the things that you were mentioning about the visual resource, is that what it's called?
It's like imaginal
Oh,
resourcing.
imaginal
Yeah.
resources. So that's terminology I'm not familiar with. I've been out of the psychotherapy kind of jargon for out of that for a while. So I don't know if that's like new terms. Either way, it sounds very much like the trance journeys,
Yes.
right? The things that we studied in the certification program. Do you also notice that whether it's through my program or other trainings that you took, are you starting to notice that there is that overlap? They pretty much can be very similar or even the same, but just maybe the language is different or the terminology. It's more of like a westernized word and that kind of a thing.
Um, Overlapping, yes, I would say when we're, for example, like I use the word in Spanish, pláticas. So
Mm-hmm.
pláticas is a term in curanderismo, which just means having a
Mm-hmm.
conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So in a plática, you're providing guidance to your client. You're providing spiritual guidance.
Mm-hmm.
You're giving them a different perspective into the situation at hand. And what we're doing from the energy medicine practitioner perspective is providing intuitive guidance. And
Mm-hmm.
we have enough experience and ability to provide that in our clinical setting as well. Because my intuition does, I don't necessarily turn it off. I'm still going to be getting different
Mm-hmm.
downloads and nudges to provide information. I'm not going to say, hey, your mother, who crossed
Mm-hmm.
over is telling
Right.
me this, but
Right.
hey, have you considered this situation or that situation? And you code switch as
Mm-hmm.
maintaining that clinical language or using the language, your mother's, sharing this message from the other side when you're doing the energy medicine, right? So
Mm-hmm.
being able to stay within kind of the realms of each one, but I'm still using intuitive guidance or sharing intuitive guidance with my client.
Awesome. Awesome. So earlier you also mentioned like what has helped you when you did take my certification program and the apprenticeship. Like,
Yes.
can you describe a little bit more about what that was? Like, what was the benefit?
Um, uh, and I'll backtrack a little bit on how we met. It was very organic.
Mm-hmm.
How you just I went to the affair in
Oh
Tarzana
yeah.
where you had your booth,
Mm-hmm.
and you were the first booth that I saw when I walked in. One of the
Mm-hmm.
things that is important when we talk about this, I do a lot of school social work consultation, is self-efficacy and being able to see yourself kind of like a visceral um, uh, I identify myself in you, so
Mm-hmm.
seeing you as a Chicana,
Mm-hmm.
as a social worker, I was immediately drawn to your energy, to your program, because there's not as many of us as I would like to see in this field, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
so it's a very organic um, kind of I was drawn right to your table. And in the process of learning, I realized about your program. I realized how comprehensive it was, and I had these different certifications already, but the number of times that we were able to meet, the depth in which we went into topics that I hadn't necessarily been exposed to, being able to learn the sound healing, which was a certification that I didn't have yet. Um, your organization is top notch.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, of course, yes.
You
The
can thank my Capricorn self.
And I'm drawn to that as well because I'm the same way, right? So it helps
Mm-hmm.
me to learn and conceptualize the information
Mm-hmm.
when it's organized the way that you organize it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and I mean this in such a beautiful way. There's a incredibly masterful healing practitioner that you embody while at the same time being very simple and approachable. And I see the same things in me, right? So I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
this is almost, the safety that creates for learning is very important, right? Because you have practitioners who are like to maybe they're interested in celebrity or being this
Mm-hmm.
influencer with millions of followers, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm more interested in intimate,
Mm-hmm.
genuine connections.
Mm-hmm.
And smaller spaces, I feel, create more of that ability for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, so just the space that you create, the what you embody, how you organize the information, and it just felt like a really safe community to learn, to ask questions, to dive into different aspects of energy medicine and healing. And then what I really appreciated was your business savvy, right? You come with so much
Mm-hmm.
experience of having developed this business from the ground up. And that's
Mhm.
where a lot of us are starting. We may have an incredible like skill set, but
Mhm.
the business stuff, it doesn't, I mean, that doesn't motivate me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not
Sure.
business savvy,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's important to learn those things. You don't learn that in MSW school, you
No.
know?
Mm-mm.
Um, and
Mhm.
that's like a business school type of quality. So, and you wrap that up with a pretty little bow also, right? You give it to us
Mhm.
step by step,
Mhm.
and we're able to kind of progress through these steps to develop our business. Um, one step at a time.
Mhm.
Um, the I just want to say how grateful I am too, just reference what I referenced earlier of my own growth. So even though I was in this program, created a safe space for me to go through um, some shadows that I was having to look at. And even
Mhm.
though I was learning, I was also in the trenches of layer upon layer of stuff that was coming up. And I think this was something that was happening to a lot of us
Mhm.
after COVID,
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
we were being forced energetically to look at things that we had buried. And this was past life trauma. This was, I mean, deeply set cellular memories.
Mhm.
And that I was able to share with non-judgment in this community of women and healing practitioners. So not only am I learning, but I'm receiving. I'm receiving the
Mhm.
healing from you. I'm receiving the healing from my peers,
Mhm.
and we're engaging in a reciprocal healing relationship,
Mhm.
which is beautiful, right?
Mhm.
It's a community of women, not just learning and becoming business women, but we're healing one another at the same
Mhm.
time. Yeah.
Mhm. So beautifully said. So beautifully said. And also, I'm so grateful that you brought up the shadow work, right? I think that is definitely a component, an area that is overshadowed, overlooked. When you're developing your healing skills or other curriculums, like that's an area that we talk about and being vulnerable. And if you can't be vulnerable and address your shadow selves, how are you going to, not you personally, but like just one, how is one going to be able to hold space for their communities if they're still, holding on to those areas? And this is not to say that you have to be perfect and you're like healed and all of those things, but to be able to be transparent and authentic in
Hmm.
how you're healing yourself, I think is such a beautiful part of our journey as healers, is really
Hmm.
tapping into those shadow aspects so that you can grow even more and
Hmm.
be able to speak truth to your communities about what it's like, the painful aspects of healing,
Yeah.
how it's really hard.
Yes, it's
It is
work.
so incredibly hard. It's
Hmm.
a lot of work, right? And I think firsthand experience of understanding how deeply that work is, that it's now understanding it's beyond just the mental health, it's beyond just the emotional aspects. It's also a soul
Yes.
retrieval, it's a soul journey that you begin to explore when you're going deeper into your spiritual work,
Hmm.
right?
100%. Yeah.
And I think, like, has that also helped you, like, deepening your spiritual work, deepening your connection to your soul self? Has that helped you to also move forward and to say yes to more of these aspects of you wanting to do this more full time?
Hmm. Tremendously, tremendously. And I think part of the conditioning that we're fed is that
Mm-hmm.
we have to be perfect before we become a
Oh, yeah.
practitioner.
Mm-hmm.
And what I have come to learn and accept is all my messy parts are my gifts. They're
Mm-hmm.
such
Mm-hmm.
beautiful representations of courage, of um, of work, of love, acceptance, And that I don't have to be perfect. Who is perfect, and also
Mm-hmm.
who's not perfect? We're all really in a journey of unfolding that is perfect at all of its layers, and it's so important for us to know that we can be messy and going through our process. But the thing is, I'm intentional about it. I'm intentional
Mm-hmm.
about looking at my shadows. I'm intentional about doing the work. I'm intentional about my spiritual practice. I have a deep, deep relationship with ayahuasca, with grandmother ayahuasca, and I've had
Mm-hmm.
many, many plant journeys that have opened me in so many different ways, in different communities that I have grown through and from. But I have a deep understanding now that I don't have to be perfect in order to be an incredibly effective practitioner, to be able to
Mm-hmm.
create that container for others to engage in their own healing, and that I'm not healing them, that they're healing themselves, and I'm just
Mm-hmm.
creating the space and the container and the witnessing and the guidance for them to be able to do that, and we do it together. In a beautiful
Mm-hmm.
process to be able to do it together and to walk that path
Mm-hmm.
together. I didn't have a whole lot of that for myself. My teachers were like my guides, my a channeler that I have worked with for a very long time, and channels an angelic energy. I've grown closer to my spirit guides, my own higher self. I'm much more able to receive downloads and the intuitive nudges more easily,
Mm-hmm.
and that's grown over time. It's a practice. It's not something that came immediately. The what
Mm-hmm.
came what was very easy for me was the empath, the
Mm-hmm.
deeply feeling. But part of my process and my growth has been to be able to manage how the sensitivity, the level of sensitivity that I feel
Mm-hmm.
towards other people's experiences, and even my own, how deeply I feel my own experiences, right? How do I contain it? How do I stay grounded?
Mm-hmm.
And in my groundedness, I'm able to offer clearer direction and also make clearer choices and better choices for myself.
Yeah, awesome. And with all of that, can you share with us? So you're the founder of Corazon Healing, and
Mhm.
can you tell us a little bit more about how that came about and what offerings? I know you shared a little bit earlier, but maybe for those who are joining us now and watching this later, tell us a little bit about what your business is and what services you're
Sure,
offering.
yeah. So Corazon Healing, the heart space for me, healing of the heart, and also activating the heart has been transformational for me.
Mm-hmm.
I can be very much in my head, but I can also feel very deeply. So I'm intellectual, and then I have this big, beautiful feeling heart. I needed to know how to use it with intentionality, use that skill with intentionality. So, in Corazon, my culture, the language, I wanted it to have a Spanish word in it.
Mm-hmm.
Being a Chicana is very an important part of my identity, in the sense that the indigenous practices, my lineage, Purepecha Indian in my lineage on my mother's side. So honoring that as a Chicana,
Mm-hmm.
and centering the heart space as the healer, the
Mm-hmm.
healing place where it comes from is from the heart. And in my practice, in my growth as understanding, spirituality and my own spirituality, the way that we receive the most is by centering our heart in our heart space.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so basically what I want to promote through the offerings of Corazon Healing is to be able to empower individuals to engage in heart-centered living. What does that feel like? What does that look like? What kinds of actions does it entail? How do we even begin to make decisions from that space if we're constantly living in fear, if we have trauma, if we have these walls up, if we don't feel safe?
Mm-hmm.
We don't trust ourselves. We don't trust others. How do we begin to take those layers off where we're just protecting ourselves, and really begin to live more from the heart space? We speak from the heart space, we make decisions, we build our relationships from the heart, and the most important one is our relationship with ourselves. How do we feel about
Mm-hmm.
ourselves? Do we love ourselves? Can we fully accept ourselves in all of the different facets, um, of every versions of ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the name, is very close to my heart. It's Corazon.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I offer clinical services, so psychotherapy, and I offer energy medicine, individual sessions, and I have a package, four sessions for 444. So it's a discount from the price of the 125, if you purchase your package of four. It can also be supplemental, like I mentioned earlier, to the clinical therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I offer community sound baths. I have one coming up at Dan Zone in San Fernando, in September. I've
Nice.
offered them. Yes, love her so much. She's been a friend of mine. She's a salsa instructor, cumbia instructor. So dance for me is very freeing.
Fun.
It's a way to be, not in your thinking space, but just existing, being in
Mm-hmm.
flow.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to provide it at her dance studio, and I've been offering sound baths at the parks, in Santa Clarita, and then I also offer donation-based sound baths in a park in Burbank. So sound baths to me have been, that's part of what I learned with your program.
Mm-hmm.
um, I love them so much
Mm-hmm.
because you're in community, and you're providing the meditate, the frequency, the vibration. It's incredibly healing for you as the facilitator, and you're creating the space for others to relax deeply, to um, uh, inspire that moment of healing within themselves, and also connect with each other. um,
Mm-hmm.
because we need each other. We're social creatures, and we can isolate a
Mm-hmm.
lot. So having these opportunities to engage the community in a group setting has been really fulfilling for me. So I hope to
Mm-hmm.
offer more of those as
Mm-hmm.
time goes on as well.
Mm-hmm. And do you know the date for the one in September?
Yeah, it's September 22nd. It's a Saturday. It'll
Mm-hmm.
be in the morning at 10:15, where we'll have some more information in terms of how to purchase a ticket. I do have openings for psychotherapy on Mondays. I have limited availability on Mondays.
Awesome.
Um, so if anyone's interested, they can go to my website. They can have a free 15-minute consultation to see if we're a good match, and then we can go from there. Um, and then I also offer animal communication at a donation based. So if someone's interested in learning more about um, an animal's behavior, or to me, and what is my dogs have been incredible teachers for me in terms of
Mm-hmm.
detachment,
Mm-hmm.
seeing past the illusion of illness. Um, they've taught me so much on how intuitive they are,
Mm-hmm.
and and my fur baby, who was with me for 15 years, had memories when I was speaking with an animal communicator from her perspective, had memories of when I was a little girl prior to her being with me in my 20s. So she
Mm-hmm.
told this practitioner, this animal communication practitioner, things about my childhood. I'm like, she wasn't with me when I was that age. And it turns
Mm-hmm.
out, and this has been confirmed by several different animal communication practitioners, that she reincarnated. So she's actually had two incarnations with me
Nice.
in my lifetime that lasted about 15 years. So it's a deeply rooted, beautiful relationship with her. And she's now um, my little helper, like from the other side. I feel her very deeply. She comes into sessions with me. I dream about her, very vivid dreams of her. So, but
Mm-hmm.
it was a very deep healing in terms of grief and loss, and what I was feeling in terms of the
Mm-hmm.
grief and loss, being able to redefine it as just a deep, deep love. And it was actually through the EMDR process when I was getting trained in EMDR that I had a vision of her while I was going in kind of this trance experience that we facilitated in EMDR. And she gave me more messages. I saw more. I redefined kind of her last moments with me, and it was deeply, deeply healing. So our animal companions are some of our greatest teachers, and they have messages for us. They have things that they're also evolving and within their experience through the animal form, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's really a tandem healing, and it can
Mm-hmm.
be really fun, and it can
Mm-hmm.
also be very reassuring um, to see if they have any messages for us. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm. That's so beautiful. So, for those of you who want to know more about Yvette and her offerings, I've pinned her website, and it's www.corazonhealing.com, right?
it's
And you can see more of what she's offering, and then can they contact you there? Is your contact information there?
yeah. Contact information is there. My email is Yvette@corazonhealing.com. And then my phone number is on there as well. And there's also a consultation button where they can request a consultation with me through my platform, my Simple Practice platform.
Awesome. Okay, okay. And then you're here on Instagram under what is your
It- It's
handle?
at Corazon_healing.
At Corazon_healing. Okay, great. So, one last thing before we wrap up, unless there's anyone who has any questions who's here with us live, if you have any questions for Yvette, go ahead and put them in the comments. We're always grateful for any questions anyone may have. But before you came on, I was just sharing that the purpose for me doing these interviews with you alumni and people who have graduated from my program is to help to amplify your voices and to show that you are like other people in the community. Like you mentioned earlier, like when you found my table and you saw that I'm Chicana, that I'm representing my culture and that I have a similar background, professional background, and having that community connection. I mean, that is just my vibe. Like that is just so important to me because it could be very lonely and isolating when you think like you have these either visions or knowings, it's either your intuition, your guides, your psychic abilities, and you're like, is there anyone else like me?
Mhm.
And that is what I use this platform for, and I'm so grateful that again you said yes to being here because it's really incredible the things that you have been able to share today, and I hope that people take away, the things that you can offer, knowing that you've been able to bridge those worlds and bring them together. And then on top of that, you work with animals. Like that is so cool.
Yeah. Thank
And
you.
that
Thank
in
you for having
itself,
me.
huh?
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I mean, and that in itself is just another area that is underserved, right? Like
Oh,
it's not very common for animal practitioners. And so getting through some of those maybe taboos
mhm.
and you just representing like, yep,
Yes,
this is what I do,
absolutely. Mhm.
um, and so with all of that, what is what is something that you can share with people, maybe those who can see themselves in you as well, right? Or see themselves in us, like we
Mhm.
represent um, being women, being a woman of color, being Chicana, and being spiritualists and being unapologetic. So, what can you say to people who are maybe on that beginning journey, what they can learn even um, by taking my certification program that you can help them to understand as well, that they too can also do what you're doing now.
Mhm. That they're worthy, that they're
Mm,
worthy, that if they're thinking about it, if it's something that is calling them, that they're worthy of pursuing it. They're worthy of pursuing it. They're perfectly capable. and that there's resources available to help you develop these skills. So if it's something that people are curious about, give yourself the permission to explore it. And I really feel like it's pursuing a calling. I think there's so much of a need for us to provide these services in at this time, in the community, in the global community that we're in. We're so important. Um, to release some of that doubt and to know that there are people like you, like me, very willing to support them in this process. So take the chance, do it.
Awesome, awesome. Well, again, thank you, Yvette, and thank you for everyone, for those of you who have stayed with us this whole time, for those of you who are watching the replay. Again, if you are curious about wanting to develop your healing abilities, my next certification program starts next month, September 21st. If you have any questions, you're always welcome to contact me. I offer a free consultation, and it's going to be very exciting. I'm very excited to start this, and it's going to end right before Halloween. So you'll have that vibe of being a certified energy healer and crafting your gifts, all that good stuff before the end of the year. And I look forward to being able again to share all the wonderful things that you're doing, Yvette. And again, everyone, make sure to follow Yvette at Corazon_Healing,
That's
right?
right.
And
Yes.
then your website is www.corazonhealing.com.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you so
Thank
much. Thank
you.
you,
Have a
everybody,
good
for
one.
tuning in.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.